we've all turned up the radio to hear Brother Jimmy, Jimmy Lakey, from coast to coast and shore to shore. Now raise your voice. Oh, let us all, Jimmy Lakey, get out of bed. Jimmy Lakey, raise your voice. Jimmy Lakey, Lakey, hey, can't live without it with Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey.
All right, anybody notice anything different today? How you doing? Got the hat on? Yeah, we're good. Everybody happy? I want to watch this. It's going to blow up here. Watch this, producer Chad. They're going to notice something different about today's show, and when they do, good Lord in heaven, prepare thyself for a firestorm of conversation. Good to have all of you here on the program. Everybody happy? Ooh, let's see who the first one that notices anything different about today's program. How's everybody doing? Well, the Dallas Cowboys got their butts spanked by the Denver Broncos here. Now, as a Dallas Cowboy fan living in exile in the great state of Colorado, it was embarrassing. Dallas Cowboys, they asked me before somebody asked me before the game, they said, there it is in the chat room, they're on it. I actually, right before the show, I had a blue shirt on, and I told producer Chad I almost wore a red shirt, and he said, you should. And I said, I may go have a wardrobe change, and I did. And for some of you, you may think it's a malfunction. I just wanted to mess you up today. Yeah, red shirt for which team? Listen, it's for Donald Trump's team. The red hat, the red hat. And so anyway, I'm watching the game yesterday, and somebody asked me before the Dallas Cowboys got their butt spanked by the Denver Broncos yesterday, and guess what? They said, Jimmy, who is that starting tight end? Or they're asking me about some position player. And I said, listen, we Cowboys fans are so used to getting slaughtered, we don't name the animals, okay? We don't know. We know like a Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb. Other than that, we don't care. You know why? Because it's dangerous. You become attached to them if you give them names. And so I don't know. It's just, we call them the tight end. That's all we know. We call them by their numbers because that way, we don't name them because it's just a slaughterhouse here. Anyway, Jerry Jones, you kiss my butt, would you? I'd love for you to do it. You're a jackwagon, and you have destroyed again. It's just an embarrassment yesterday. It's probably NFL's best offense, but didn't fire yesterday. You have bad days, but the defense sucks, and supposedly they traded Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers, right? They traded him, and supposedly they get draft picks in the future. Well, the future is always in the future for the Cowboys. It's always the future. We're going to get there next year. Anyway, Jerry Jones, I don't know what to say. Anyway, Cowboys got spanked yesterday. I had to be behind enemy territories in Denver watching it. And somebody asked me, did you go to the game? And I said, no. When I first moved to Colorado, I went to a Dallas Cowboys football game at the old Mile High Stadium. I went there, and the Cowboys lost it. And then I heard the stat yesterday. I don't know if it's true. Dallas hasn't beat the Denver Broncos for like 30 years. And let me tell you, that's saying something because the Denver Broncos have sucked for a lot of those 30 years. And it's just one of those things. Anyway, that's all right. Humiliation was my day, but I've decided to cheer myself up with a pretty red shirt. I do have other colors in the wardrobe. Kind of. Not really. I don't. All right. So, by the way, we'll talk one more football point, okay, before you yell at me and get to the news of the day. One more football point it is. Anybody watch the Sunday night game last night? The Packers of Green Bay and the Steelers from Pittsburgh, right? Well, I don't mind the retro uniforms. I think it's kind of cool. I think it's the throwback jerseys, I think they call them. But I was confused that whole dang game because, and again, I have a little bit of color blindness, so sometimes distinctions on a uniform I can't see, especially on the television. For instance, I saw the bright yellow uniforms, and I thought that might be and see, I'm still confused as to who was who. I think that was the Steelers, but I kept thinking that was bright yellow with green stripes, and that was bright yellow with black stripes, and that was the Steelers. And then the Packers were in all white, and it threw me off all night. And I really wanted Aaron Rodgers to win as he showed back up into Green Bay, and he used to play for Green Bay. I mean, I was so confused the whole game, and I was sober. I'm telling you. Was anybody else confused by that game? I'm like, yeah, go Aaron. Oh, crap, that's not Aaron's team anymore. And it just really confused me. The uniform switches, the colors, and then just seeing Aaron Rodgers in something besides a a Green Bay uniform was just weird to me. It was really confusing for me, and I don't know. I was cheering at times that I shouldn't have been cheering because I forgot which uniforms were who. If I would have been a referee in that game, it would have been very, 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 very bad. And if I would have been a quarterback in that game, I would not know who to throw to. Am I the only person confused by that game last night? It really was a mind of, because I don't sit there and stare at it. So I'm kind of having it on the background while I'm reading or looking for news stories or whatever I'm doing, buying crap. I don't know what I'm doing. So working on, actually last night I was working on a marketing plan for Rivers Promise, our charity work. So as I'm working there I couldn't tell. It's just weird. Anyway, enough of that. Enough of that football, right? I don't want to get yelled at. I'm already going to get yelled at for having a red shirt on today, but I wanted to surprise all of you. I really did. All right, Donald Trump is in Asia. We just don't deserve this guy. If you follow me on Instagram, he's amazing. He gets off the plane, I think he was Malaysia or Malawi. I don't know. He was some a place, and all the traditional dancers are out there dancing, and Donald Trump walks off the big aircraft, and he decides to do the YMCA dance. I'm telling you, it was amazing. I also retweeted, I think it's on my Instagram, just my Jimmy Lakey, JIMMYLAKEY. You can see it. Someone did the electric slide of the thing you do at the wedding, one to the right, one to the left. That wedding thing people do, the kids do at the weddings. Anyway, so the electric slide, I think it's called. Did somebody put it to that? It's all on my Instagram, Jimmy Lakey, JIMMYLAKEY. But it's just funny to see the guy dancing. And supposedly he's got reason to dance. Guess what? We have the framework for a trade deal with China. Evidently, all the tariff threats and the 100% tariffs coming your way, Mr. Z, if you don't get your act together. And he says, "Oh, I'm going to get my act together." And all of a sudden, we have a big trade deal coming up with China, and it's going to include everything from soybeans to all sorts of stuff. So it looks like Donald Trump is still the great negotiator. Also, there was another war of some Asian countries. I didn't even know they'd been warring for generations. There's another peace deal out there. And so Donald Trump is on the march. Isn't it just wild? Again, I'm kind of going back to pre-Obama and pre-Biden. And I don't remember Biden or Bush or anybody just being so aggressive and getting something down and pushed through. Let me ask you a question. Does anybody remember other presidents having just a streak of going for it, not waiting for something to happen, but just using the force of his own will and his personality and just demanding that change starts to happen, not just locally, but globally? I don't recall it. Again, I'm not, some of you have a couple more years and a couple more presidents on me. So let me know. I mean, I don't even recall. Again, I never got to vote for Ronald Reagan. I was too young. A lot of great things happened with Ronald Reagan, but Ronald Reagan was not, maybe I'm wrong. Somebody give me the perspective, but Donald Trump is just, he's making stuff happen, and and he's forcing it to happen very quickly. And again, did that happen during Reagan? I don't think it happened in Obama. Things might have happened for good or worse, good, bad, or ugly, but Donald Trump is just a force of nature. And I think it's just his determination. And rather than say, next year, let's go to Asia, because we just got back from a long trip. He's like, okay, we've rested for 48 hours. Let's go again and let's get some stuff done. And it is amazing. So some of you with more historic perspective, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Has there ever been a president, again, whether you liked him or not, that really pushed the agenda? Even sometimes they're pushing the bad stuff. It's kind of subtle behind the scenes, a slippery slope. Donald Trump is just kicking down doors, taking names and saying, let's do it. Let's get some stuff done. All right. Donald Trump tours Asia. China deal is coming. Let's do the other headlines. Government shutdown continues, but paychecks do not. How many of you have not received your paychecks? Another round of paychecks set to go out this week, and some folks not going to get them. I have a buddy that serves in the fire department on a federal base. Therefore, he's a federal employee. And he said, I got to head back to work today. Another week of not getting paid. Excited about that. It's going to be interesting to see. There's some speculation that the Democrats might decide to lighten up after their election, keep their base all jazzed up and fired up heading into next week's election, next Tuesday, the off-year of the off-year election. Maybe that's what their strategy is. But I think the education needs to just be continued to put out there is that this is not a Republican shutdown. Republicans have put the continuing resolution out and said, we voted for it. We're voting for the open government, and it's Democrats who are voting against the open government. And again, I think that you just have to continue to educate people that this is not a a long-term budget thing. This is just simply a continuing resolution, the same that has been operating. Nothing changes. It's going to be the same budget basically as what in resolution, the clean bill. There's no sneaky things in there. It's going to be the thing that they voted for many times in the past because they're not on regular order in the House. And then about a month from now, they'll get to have a discussion and debate for a real live budget. So anyway, the government shutdown continues. Paychecks do not go out. There's some speculation that they got to get this fixed because air traffic controllers and other people are like, how long are we going to operate like this and just keep coming to work with no job? So I have some trips planned by November. This week, all the way through November, has a lot of busy travel for me. And I'm hoping that they get this thing settled because I don't need any air traffic control delays. I don't need any of that kind of stuff going on. All right, Donald Trump, one more story, then I want to get to our question of the day as we go through the headlines. One of the headlines I have here is Donald Trump is a great troller. Anybody remember the trolls of Donald Trump? We've talked about him. Well, one of the topics that he continues to troll, it's kind of fun to do, is talking about running for president for a third term in 2028. President Trump has shot down speculation that he would run as a vice presidential candidate in 2028, telling reporters aboard Air Force One that Republicans have already a great prospect of candidates. Trump made the statement during a gaggle with reporters. The fact that the reporters continued to ask him, are you going to run for vice president if you're not running for president? And they just keep asking him because he's handing out Trump 2028. Trump pointed to Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio as two potential successors while denigrating potential Democrat candidates as low IQ. He says, we have great people. I don't have to get into that, but we have one of them standing right here with JD. Obviously, the vice president's great. Marco's great. I'm not sure if anybody run against those. I think if they ever formed a group, it would be unstoppable. They have Jasmine Crockett, a low IQ person. AOC's low IQ. And if they give her an IQ test, have her pass the exams anyway, like I did when I was at Walter Reed. So it's just funny. Donald Trump continues to troll them, get in their head, and they're continuing to ask him, no matter how many times he's kind of said, no, but here's your 2028 hat. And they're continuing to ask him, okay, if you won't run for president, would you run for vice president? Which probably couldn't do anyway, but don't tell him that. All right, that's just funny. I love the way he trolls the media, and he just lives rent-free in their head, and they can't get over it. All right, I got a question of the day. It has nothing to do with trolling, nothing to do with Donald John Trump, nothing to do with politics. It has to do with your spelling. Anybody, we often talk about producer Chad and I, but pre-show, we're putting stuff on the sheet, or he's getting stuff ready. They're getting ready for the things that pop on the screen. And sometimes we'll spell check. What do we need? What's a word? And, and I meant one of the earliest words. And yeah, last week I was trying to spell a word and I couldn't remember how to spell it. And I had to kind of and I had to look. We got autocorrect on some programs, but some things you just type it and it doesn't tell them that they're wrong. And so producer Chad and I started talking about words that we have tough time spelling. And I can't remember what mine was, but because I try not to spell it as much as I can. But his was entrepreneur. Entrepreneur was a very, very tough word. And if you think about it, it really is. And I'll have to think of what my word was. Do you have words that you still to this day, no matter how many times you spell them, you have to really think about spelling them? You just have to kind of think about it. Entrepreneur would probably be one even for me. I agree with producer Chad on that. Growing up, I remember taking my spelling test when I was a kid, and I wanted to stay home from school one day, and Mama said, Jimmy, why would you want to stay home from school? She talked like a Southern woman, and I said, Mama Lakey. I didn't talk like a Southern kid. It's just good for dramatics here. I said, Mama, I got a spelling test today. I feel sick. I had a spelling test, and I was really struggling with one word. Not one, not two, not three, not 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I struggled with the word 8 the worst. I mean, I couldn't spell 8. I just couldn't. It just made no sense that EIGHT in my Hooked on Phonics class was not really working that well. So early on, now I have, just so you know, now I have no trouble spelling the word 8. It's no problem. Entrepreneur, on the other hand, I might have to peek. So there's the question for you. Do you have any words that whenever you have to spell them, forget spell check, maybe you're just making yourself a note, maybe you just, how do I spell this? Well, I'm just going to spell it wrong because spell check will get it, but you don't know how to spell it. What are the words in the English language that you have a tough time spelling to this day? I'd love to hear from you on that. Jeff says Wapner, because last week he made a comment and I said, yeah, it's Wapner. Wapner, he's just randomly saying stuff. And by the way, I think the second spelling there is the correct spelling for Judge Wapner. All right, so Monday morning, good to have you here on the program. News items we still got to get to. We'll talk about more about Trump trolling. I'm going to talk about I talked about the confusing return of Aaron Rodgers. I could not get those uniforms right last night. It was very, very bothersome to me. I want to get into Operation Arctic Frost, though. We got to get into that because that is a topic of conversation that we cannot let it be forgotten. There's some things in the news, and I'm going to get to my guest here. A couple of things in the news that you have to know that are should not be forgotten. The response to COVID that happened and politicians and how they behaved and municipalities and states and governments, we have to be sure to hold them accountable and make sure they never, ever, ever are. We don't forgive them for that. And I think there's another thing we have to hold people accountable for, and that is Operation Arctic Frost and the weaponization of the government. So we'll talk more about that here in just a second. All right, let me welcome in my first guest of the morning, if we may, on this random Monday morning. It's just a weird day. Does it feel like? I think it's weird because I know I have a travel this week. I have jury duty this week. I won't be on the show tomorrow. I mean, it's just I don't feel like I have any rhythm yet, and I don't know. We'll figure it out loud. All right, welcome in my guest, if I may, and I may because it is my program, and I'm told that I can do almost what I want until producer Chad pulls the plug on me. Author of a book called Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. It's a great title of a book, though. Y'all Fired. Mandy M. Gunasekara, she's the author, and we welcome her onto the stage here. Mandy, welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm great, and it's good to be with you.
You know, Y'all Fired, I forgot about the name of the book when I was talking about trying to skip school because I couldn't spell the word 8, and I didn't want to take a spelling test in second grade. My mama was Southern. She would have said, Y'all Fired. And I said, Mama, I don't want to go to school today. So I understand the Y'all Fired thing.
Yeah, our thinking was sometimes you're fired just isn't enough when you're talking about the bureaucracy. So we needed the plural form, and y'all was the most obvious answer to that.
Well, I'm glad to have you here on the program. Thousands of earballs will hear this show. Some watch it live, some stream it later, and then thousands on the internet and the webcast. Excuse me, the podcast on iHeart and Spotify, etc. So glad to have you here. First of all, let's dive into the book, and then I want to run a couple of topics by about some of these. Maybe we're firing some people during this government shutdown, but talk about the book Y'all Fired.
Yeah, so there's 3 main parts to it. The first part is my experience with the deep state. And it's pretty sinister and it's pretty gross, actually. A lot of this had to do with the fact that I was a key staffer in helping the president get out of the disastrous Paris Climate Accord, an important decision he made early on in his first administration, and then he's repeated in the second. But during that process in the first administration, I got a lot of folks from the State Department that didn't like me, and they tried to find all sorts of ways to get back and send a message that they would do anything they could to stop the president's policies from going forward. What a lot of folks may not know is that there was a small team of us the president asked us to renegotiate a better deal after we decided to get out of Paris. We were sent to Germany to do those negotiations. When you travel as a federal employee, the State Department handles your logistics. I had traveled before, didn't think twice about it until I ended up 45 minutes away from the actual negotiations in a sex hotel that the consulate had actually put together for myself and one other female attendee out of 120 of the U.S. delegation. And it was this message that they were not only going to pull out all the stops to stop the president's policies, but they wanted to demean, demoralize, and discredit we, the political appointees, trying to get that done. So there's a few other anecdotal experiences, but that's the first part of the book. The second part is a deep dive into how did we get to a point where the unelected bureaucrat had more sway in our constitutional republic than the individual American voter, and how did they subvert accountability and balance elements that are really important in the construct of our government. So that is for the wonks at heart, the middle part. The last part of the book is the most exciting, I think, which is what do we do about this? And at the time I wrote this, President Trump had not yet been reelected. I wanted him to, I thought he would be, but it was a how to of what we should do to get the government in order, starting with an audit, the likes of which we saw with the Department of Government Efficiency. And the good news is a lot of the policies of how to fix the federal government have been embraced by President Trump, his cabinet officials, and now, while President Trump and the Republicans tried to avoid the shutdown, there are new opportunities to seriously shrink the size and scope of the federal government in ways that would have been a lot harder had we not been in this prolonged government shutdown situation. So my book goes into a lot of various policies to restore accountability, restore balance, shrink the reach of the federal government. And the good news is a lot of those policies are underway right now.
You're listening to The Voice. If you listen to the podcast of the show later, Mandy M. Gunasakara, author of a book called Y'all Fired, a Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. She served as President Trump's chief of staff at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, chief of staff at the U.S. EPA in Trump's term. She's also a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation, lives with her children in Oxford, Mississippi. There's another word, producer Chad, that I don't think Delilah can spell without help, Mississippi. Mandy M. Gunasakara, again, the name of the book is Y'all Fired. Mandy, let's talk about this deep state, the swamp, as President Trump called it. Most of us kind of imagined it, but Donald Trump has really highlighted it, and most of us have waken up to the realization that it's not just there, it's really there, and it's really bad. Kind of talk about the width and the depth of the deep state. You know, you get government appointees, cabinet officers that come in and they do their best to serve whoever the president is and their agenda, whether we like it or not. They serve that person. Are they ever really in control? And how did we get to this point? I mean, it's that deep state that's kind of just like barnacles on a boat hanging out there, and they just don't go away.
Yeah, I think that's a really good picture to paint the deep state. They are far and wide in terms of their reach, and then they go really deep into the various agencies. And you never know, the biggest problem for political appointees, you never know what tool they're going to try to use to subvert your policies. Sometimes it is in the regulatory context. So at the agencies, all they really do is spit out regulations one way or the other. The deep state will try to undermine the veracity of those regulations through legal maneuverings, trying to tip the technical analysis in a way that it would fail any real scrutiny. So there's the ways that they try to subvert policy, but then there's the more sinister approach. Things like they did to me, where they'll put you up. They're in charge of your logistics. They're going to put you on the wrong plane, or they'll put you up in a seedy hotel, or they're going to make life difficult for you when you're traveling abroad trying to achieve a task for the president or your direct boss, who may be a cabinet member in charge of a various agency. The other way that they do it is they start anonymous investigations. And you saw this in so many different forms. There's the inspector general offices that oversee all the various agencies, but you would have anonymous tips come into those oversight arms of the federal government, and then that would initiate an investigation. And even if there's no merit to that investigation, if you are the target or a potential target of any federal investigation, you have to lawyer up. And the deep state understands that that's a drain on resources. It creates stress in your life. And so they would also use that as a tool to go after appointees and try to subvert them from getting the things done that needed to get done to achieve the president's broader agenda. And so it's the hardest thing as an appointee is you don't know who it is that is working against you, and you don't know how they're going to deliver those barriers to what your ultimate policy goal is. And I do think you're right. President Trump, he really characterized this obstacle that conservative Republicans faced for a very long time. I can tell you, before I worked for President Trump, I was working on climate issues for a Republican senator from Oklahoma, and we faced this same type of opposition, but it wasn't as clear. And when I would try to explain it, I would go home and explain to my family what I did, but the challenges to what I did. They couldn't quite grasp not just the fact that we were facing all sorts of faceless opposition within the federal government, but also the way the media would work against us and mischaracterize what we were doing or try to paint everything in a negative light. or just avoid any good news stories to try to discredit my boss and the work that we were ultimately doing. So President Trump did a great job defining that. And I think the American people now truly know what the deep state is. They know the tools that they have at their disposal. And not that they dismiss them outright, but they realize it's a problem. And the origin of this problem, I won't get into all of it right now, but it really dates back to the passage of the 16th Amendment, which is when income tax was established, and it shifted monetary resources away from the states towards Washington, D.C., and the problem has proliferated from there.
She's a veteran environmental attorney, energy strategist, communicator. She's Mandy M. Gunasakara. The name of her book is called Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. Also a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation and served as the chief of staff of the U.S. EPA under President Donald J. Trump. She served in that administration and lives in Oxford, Mississippi. Mandy, if folks want to get a copy of the book, I know they can go to Amazon, anywhere good books are sold. If they don't sell good books, they don't sell your book. But Mandy, if folks want to follow you and your work, you're out there continuing to spread the word. Where do they find you?
Yeah, the best place is on X at Mississippi MG, or you can follow me on Truth at mandy.gunasakara.
I got one of the folks who work for me. I call him the hipster youth, Aiden. He just wanted to know if he can get Marriott points staying at a sex hotel. This is the crap I put up with. That's awful. I'm guessing you changed your reservation. I'm guessing. How do you do? What do you do? I mean, the hotels are probably filled up.
Well, that was the issue. And when you're a federal employee, there's all sorts of restrictions of you have a credit card, if you will, but there's a lot of restrictions of how you can use it. There's a whole process. So ultimately what we did is we broke protocol, and I used my own personal credit card on a federal work trip to put myself and the one other female attendee in a hostel, and we left early. And it was hugely disruptive, but it was a blessing in disguise in the sense that it provided clarity to me that we're not in Kansas anymore, if you will. Yeah. We were dealing with a very motivated and sinister deep state. And so it opened up my eyes to be aware of those situations, to not put myself or my team in those situations to the best of my ability, and just to make sure that we were focused on achieving the president's objectives, and we would be dealing with whatever obstacles the deep state tried to throw up in our way on the back end.
Mandy Gunasakara, Mississippi MG, correct? That's where you found you on the X machine?
Yes, that's right.
A pleasure. Thanks for hopping on, and I appreciate you. I really do. Mandy Gunasakara, again, the name of her book is called Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. What an amazing story. You think they're going to sabotage you on some big level way. Sometimes it's just disrupting your focus and concentration by putting you in the wrong hotel, having you miss meetings by putting you on the wrong flight, etc. So read the stories. Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. And I will make sure I give her a follow. My little X machine, very small on the X I am, but I hope to get better at it. I really do. All right, that's fantastic. That's crazy. No, you don't get Marriott points for that. I don't think they have those kind of hotels, Aiden. The hipster youth are alive and well here at the Lakey Entertainment Towers in the studio that we call the House of Lakey. All right, glad to have everybody here. It's a Monday edition of the program, and glad to have you here. I want to welcome to the program, if we may, one of our great friends, a very great historian, and we like to talk history on this show, and his name is Richard C. Lyons. Pleasure to have him jump into the studio. Mr. Lyons, good morning. Welcome back, sir.
No, good morning, Jimmy. Great to see you.
I don't know if our last guest, somebody just noticed it sounded like an angry cat. I couldn't hear, was that a cat or a child? And somebody says a cat. You don't have any kittens around there, do you, Mr. Lyons?
No, not this morning, Jim. Sometimes.
Sometimes you do. Well, if we hear them and you need to go feed them, you can just take time off the show. It's not a problem. We can make this.
That really, may I say, that was a wonderful guest, Jimmy. And I'm going to buy that book.
Yeah, Y'all Fired. She served in the chief of staff for the EPA, and the way they tried to sabotage her work was just very revealing, because sometimes you think it's, it's not just press leaks, it's booking you in the wrong hotel just to demoralize you and humiliate you. So it's fascinating. Yeah. A similar topic kind of with you is that I want to dive into, by the way, Richard C. Lyons, my guest, author of The DNA of Democracy and Shadows of the Acropolis, The DNA of Democracy. He's a great guest on the program. Glad to have him here on the show. We'll talk more about the books in just a moment. But let's talk about some of these deep state players. We have James Comey has now been indicted. You have John Bolton, who was a former advisor to President Trump and a big-time conservative Republican for many years. He's been indicted, and now there's word that Obama's CIA director Brennan could be next on the criminal prosecution list. I guess the question is, looking at it from a historic perspective and a current perspective, is this the weaponization of lawfare of the government? What are we watching here? And is this something that we should be fearful of, watching former government officials be prosecuted by a forthcoming administration?
I think, Jimmy, if you take the historical perspective, it's always a problem. And your previous guest just pointed out, when they created the income tax, they started concentrating wealth and power in Washington, D.C. And at the same time, during Woodrow Wilson's presidency, they started building the administrative state. You call it the deep state. Some people call it the swamp. It's actually the administrative state. It is a part. It stands away from the voter. The voter doesn't vote the persons into the administrative state. These are lifetime positions that are appointed inside eternal agencies. So when you have a government, and this is what the founders knew, when you have a government that cannot be fired, that can't be voted out, they are going to assume powers to themselves and benefits to themselves that they will not give the general public. And they will assume a position that's above the normal citizen. And they will defend themselves, and they will be aggressive. So when Donald Trump, and this is a perfect example, when Donald Trump was coming in 2016, talking about the deep state reacted ferociously. How did they do so? They did so with the Russia hoax, which is how all these people are combined, Comey and Brennan anyway, how they are combined in a conspiracy, literally of a coup d'etat, to get rid of Donald Trump, first as a candidate, then as a president. And it went right to the top. It involved Barack Obama ordered that the ICA change the composition of their report in order to accuse Trump of being a Russian stooge and of being a traitor. That is what they did. And this is a cabal, and it's always one and a few, right? It's a cabal of one party seeking perpetual power by getting rid of their opponent.
Yeah. The voice of Richard C. Lyons. We'll talk more about his books here in just a moment. You know, you kind of start thinking about these characters, and I guess our perception has always been up until recently that, you know, they're just great people serving America. They blend them with a silver thread of continuity through certain administrations. They served with H.W. Bush, they served with W. Bush, or they served with W. Bush, and then they went on to Obama. You know, they're just nonpartisan guys. We were told for years that James Comey was that way. And now we found out that he was never a real conservative guy. Some of these guys have backgrounds with the actual Communist Party. How did all that get lost? I mean, the truth was out there in plain sight about who these people are, that they weren't just little public servants going from administration to administration. But we didn't know that. That was the perception we were given, that they were honest brokers, but they weren't.
Well, that was the premise that was Woodrow Wilson's premise for the creation of the administrative state. That there would be people so well educated, they would be above being partisan. They would serve America and the people, not a faction or a party. But I would ask you, Jimmy, I would ask everybody in your audience, do you know a single person that isn't either a Democrat or a Republican?
Yep.
I mean, that doesn't veer one way or the other. It's not possible. And when you go to the same cocktail parties, and when your children intermarry, when you all went to the same universities, and when you see each other every day and talk about how great Obama is, how terrible Trump is, I think you're going to be a partisan. And then you're going to say, well, geez, how can I keep my team and our policies in power? And when you add a globalist agenda on top of that, you've got a whole worldwide cabal trying to keep socialism on the march. It's effective in Europe. It's effective right now in the UK, where you see Nigel Farage trying to fight back with his Reform Party. You see it with the Trump administration every day, having to fight back at this administrative state.
Let me ask you, from a historic perspective, obviously republics and empires fail throughout the course of history, and it's been over a century since this deep state and the IRS became an income tax and the centralization of power began. How did any learning from history, how did other empires and or nations stop this spiral down to where we're headed, or has anybody ever stopped it, or is it just is it a death sentence? Because we got to stop this thing.
Well, let's look at Rome as an example. In Rome, you had the Republic, and then you had a series of civil wars, and people had to decide between one military general and another. So you had to decide between Marius and Sulla. Then you had to decide between Caesar and Pompey. Well, you can equate those to our parties. And the problem is when you have a concentration in any one person or any single party, that's where the problem is. And the problem is the administrative state is a subsidiary of the Democrat Party. They own the administrative state. I think it's like 90% of the persons employed in government in Washington are self-described Democrats. So when you own the apparatus and all the money flows from Congress into this administrative state, so you're in charge of the power, you're in charge of the wealth. So when you have this standoff we're having right now, Jimmy, it's about $1.5 trillion, right? That would go directly to the administrative state for them to spend. And it's why Trump is saying, no, you can't have that money. We had an election. The Republicans won. We passed the big, beautiful bill. That's our budget. So when the Democrats are coming back and saying, wait a minute, but it's our money. That's our money. And Trump is saying, no, it's the taxpayers' money. The Democrats, the more money they get, the more their administrative state is empowered, the more they stay in power. So this is what's going on right now. And historically, we have to fight back to maintain a two-party system. We have to fight back to maintain the power of the populace, the citizen.
Again, the voice of Richard C. Lyons. Fascinating discussion that we're. You didn't think that we're in this whole government shutdown's a battle against a deep state, but there's the framework that it actually is. Mr. Lyons, we dive into this topic that Donald Trump's. He's moving very quickly in the second term. He's 9 months in and accomplished a lot. The problem is sometimes I use the phrase with the previous guest, Mandy, that this deep state is like barnacles on a boat. You got to scrape them off, and I think prosecutions and Brennan, etc. I think the prosecutions need to happen. If they've done something wrong, they need to be found guilty. Is that the only way to scrape these old barnacles off the boat, or Donald Trump leaves office and suddenly we're back to the old status quo and they just kind of embed themselves and wait for the next administration?
That's a great question, Jimmy, and it's been historical again that these persons who are in lifetime appointments in eternal agencies. I mean, do you remember Ronald Reagan said that the closest thing to eternal life we know is a federal agency and a program?
Yeah.
And it's true. Once you create these things, you never knock them down. So we have two things at work. You have Doge working on, the waste. That's one component. You've got to get to where I think his name is Vogel. You have to get to where he is. You want to get rid of programs. You want to get rid of agencies. There's 435 of them. Surely some of them are, not functional, right? So you should be getting rid of those. On the other hand, you have the bad players who literally, in a third world manner, attack their political opponent by devious means, by falsehoods, by use of the media, all these horrible things. These people have to be made to pay just so that the American public can know, hey, wait a minute, there is justice in America. Even the highest of the high doing the worst deeds can be struck down by a rightful justice system.
It's fascinating. It's possible that with this government shutdown where they're saying, give us money for the deep state, give us money for the deep state. I didn't realize this, but there's actually now power in the presidency that he can actually get rid of some of these deep state actors permanently with layoffs. I didn't even realize that was an option during the shutdown. So possibly while standing up for the deep state, maybe the left has harmed the deep state and made it easier to get rid of some of these actors.
The real Achilles heel of the deep state, Jimmy, is that most of the agencies that were created within the administrative state by design are executive agencies, so that the executive branch determines the viability of those agencies. Now, of course, with everything that Elon Musk was doing or that Doge is continuing now, the left is going to scream bloody murder. And of course, they're going to say, when you go after Comey and when you go after Brennan, that's attacking your political opponents. Well, no, what you're trying to do is create a system that's more just, more answerable to the American people. And this is where we are. You have a Donald Trump who is trying to take the country back from an unelective, unenumerated. It was never conceived in our Constitution, Jimmy, that there would ever be an administrative state.
Yeah.
And if the founders saw it, they would think it was the worst thing that ever happened to the country.
The voice of Richard C. Lyons, if you're listening later on the podcast where thousands of earballs will hear this show by the end of the day. He's a historian. He's also an author. And Mr. Lyons, let's talk about the Shadows of the Acropolis and the DNA of Democracy. Folks need to pick up copies of this and get a little historic perspective about where we're at right now.
So the DNA of Democracy, Jimmy, I thought it was necessary that people know literally the DNA traits that go into a free nation. And so ours is the greatest nation at that. So this work goes up until 1910 or so, including the sacrifices of the Civil War to write the Constitution. So it's all about the Constitution and how it functions. Shadows of the Acropolis goes to exactly what we're talking to right now. It is the foundation, the birth and the growth of the administrative state, and how the administrative state is taking away our rights to a representative government and our rights as citizens. And you can see its effect during the Obama administration, when the IRS went after the Tea Party, when the HHS went over after the Little Sisters of the Poor, when the FBI went over after reporters that Obama didn't like what they were writing. So he had the FBI investigate them. That's the administrative state, and that's their fangs and claws, as I call it.
Mr. Lyons, if somebody wants to reach out to you, follow you online, I know you have a website, they can get a copy of the book at Amazon, but you have a website and online presence. Where do they go, sir?
Yeah, to richardclyons.com, Jimmy. And yeah, the books are available at Amazon and elsewhere.
richardclyons.com. You see it right there on the screen. It's been down there for a second. If you haven't written it down, you should write it down. Richard C. Lyons. Richard, great to have you back on the program and appreciate your time. By the way, you're an author, and we have a question of the day. Are there any words that you have a trouble that sometimes you're still typing them, writing them, and you say, how do I spell that again? That some words aren't reflexive, like entrepreneur is one that my producer and I, with the producer Chad and I, struggle with. Are there any words as an author and the linguist that you are that you sometimes have to pause and go, okay, how do I spell that again?
Entrepreneur is a good one. Yeah. That's a really good one.
I do have to sometimes, though, when I'm spelling it, I'm like I before E except after C.
Exactly. And sometimes thing always gets me.
Yeah, sheriff is one. Does it have two R's or two F's? That's another simple one. Yes.
Correct. That's always a trouble.
All right. I'm glad that it's not. I'm glad that the smart guys out there sometimes have to pause and think about spelling as well.
But I hate that AI stuff. I don't want it. I don't want a co-pilot. I want my mind to be working.
Yeah, that's it. Most days my mind isn't, and my people wish I was AI. RichardClyons.com, RichardClyons.com. Check out the books, and I think you'll feel smarter when you do. And his mind was working so that yours could get smarter. How do you like that? That's a good tie-in, isn't it? All right, good to have all of you here on the program. Before I go to my next guest, who's written a fantastic book, has worked with Dr. Peter McCullough, was a primary author of their best-selling book, The Courage to Face COVID-19. The new book is called Vaccines, Myth, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. Before I go to John Leake, the author of that book, I want to remind you, if I may, that Sherry Cree is just a fantastic partner on this program, realtor extraordinaire. And listen, I know sometimes we're now heading into November and say, I'm not going to sell my house until March or April or May or June. Listen, talk to her now. Start getting that plan together. Did you know that the spring buying season actually begins before spring begins? I mean, it really does. I've heard it said many times, and I think Sherry will confirm that really it's about February is a great time to start putting your house on the market because people are starting to look and inventory is a little bit lower. But listen, maybe you got to move this holiday season. Listen, you need a realtor who can handle every aspect of your real estate needs, whether you're buying or selling, whether you're trying to get a long-term selling strategy, maybe you're a year out, maybe you're 6 months out, or maybe something's come up and you just need to get kind of moving now. Sherry Cree, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. She can help you in all of those obstacles and all of those ideas and just puts another set of eyes to help you navigate the complex world of real estate. Listen, if you play the real estate game right, that's going to be something that can create generational wealth for you, your family, next generations, obviously, generational wealth, right? But you got to do it right. You want to make the smart decisions, the right decisions, pricing, just do it right because you're not doing it every day. So when you do some real estate, make sure you do it right. Homeswithsherry.com, great sponsor of the show, homeswithsherry.com, anywhere in the I-25 corridor. If you're in the state of Colorado, that's where you can meet Sherry at. And it's from Denver to Fort Collins, Boulder, Broomfield, Lakewood, Littleton. You get the idea. Arvada. Yep. Anywhere up there. If you're in Greeley, hello, Greeley. Glad to have all of you listening in Greeley. Make sure you call homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com, and have that consultation strategy session. Great sponsor of the program. Homeswithsherry.com. Sherry Cree. We appreciate her, and I hope you'll reach out to her, homeswithsherry.com. All right, let me go to my next guest. I just gave you a partial intro of him. His name is John Lake. He's the author of Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. He's worked with Dr. Peter McCullough, was the primary author of their best-selling book, The Courage to Face COVID-19. And we welcome John Lake into the program now, if I hit the right button. John, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you back here on the program. Let's talk about this thing. I think Americans more than I ever are awake to what the vaccine industry, and it is an industry, has done. And we think of the good. Sometimes now we're learning some of the bad and the ugly. Let's talk about that's kind of where you go in the book, the mythology, the ideology, the reality. I was talking about this, the V word long before, we'll probably get shut off YouTube, you know. I was talking about this long before Dr. Fauci came around. A lot of people are waking up and going, maybe we haven't been told the truth by our public leaders or the pharmaceutical companies. Kind of dive into that topic and as it relates to the book.
Well, our starting point was the COVID-19 pandemic response, and we perceived pretty quickly in 2020 that the entire response, every element of it, was structured and was being coordinated in order to facilitate and to encourage the rollout of a new generation of immunization technology. For your readers who may not be familiar with the particulars of this, messenger RNA is the name of the game. And the idea with this new generation of immunization technology, unlike a traditional vaccine in which you attenuate or you inactivate an infectious disease pathogen, in this case, it was using messenger RNA to code the genetic sequence of a particular protein in this virus. You inject that genetic sequence into the deltoid muscle, and it actually directs the machinery of the deltoid muscle to produce this foreign protein. So this was the new technology. It was obviously very experimental. Most of humanity did not understand this. Most of humanity believed this is just a conventional vaccine. And this relentless fanaticism to roll this out, not only for those at high risk of severe COVID illness, but to everybody. every man, woman, and child on earth, as Bill Gates proclaimed in April of 2020, even young athletes who really weren't at risk from severe COVID illness. So we asked, how do you explain this sort of religious zeal of rolling this thing out so aggressively, demanding that everyone on earth get it, even people who'd already had COVID-19 illness? So Dr. McCullough and I are observing this, and we're thinking, well, this is just beyond the pale of rationality. What is going on here? And that experience started getting us thinking, well, what about the entire vaccine enterprise? It's like these guys have erected a religion around this thing. You know, what if we go back to the beginning of this in history and look at the entire story from beginning to end? And that's what we've done in our new book, Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality.
If you're listening later on the podcast, you can't see the screen, obviously. Thousands of earballs listen to the show, watch the show, and however you consume it, we appreciate it. But it's John Leake, Leake, if you're looking up the book. We'll tell you how to get it in just a second as well. But he's on the program, and we're glad to have him here. Mr. Leake, let's dive into this little topic of we want to think that people have good intentions. And, you know, the way they were shoving that to overcome the bans back in the day on Facebook and all the social media sites, I called it the booger cootie virus because it was like a booger and cooties. You wanted to stay away from it. And so I had to do that. And I could get past all the hurdles of being banned and blacked out on social media. So you like to think that people were telling us to get the booger cootie virus or that vax because they had good intentions. I think that's the sad thing we look at. Some of these people maybe don't have good intentions. They don't care about well-being. They don't care about the loss of life or the injuries that might happen. Some of these, what is the real motivation? Do these people mean well, or is there something more sinister going on?
I think that the majority of medical professionals, including nurses and pharmacists, did not possess sufficient understanding of what was being presented to them to evaluate what was really going on. So you're a doctor working in a hospital. You get an email from your university hospital administrator saying this is awesome. You know, it provides great immunity, great protection. Let's roll. This is terrific. And I think most people didn't really question that. When you start talking about motive and intention, you work your way up to the food chain, up the food chain to the top, to the people that are really developing this. And it's very difficult to say what exactly these guys were up to. There remains an element of mystery. We know that they were really, really revved up about rolling out this new genetic technology. The COVID-19 pandemic afforded them a public emergency in which to do this with enormous zeal and enormous state resources. So what exactly they perceived was to be gained? I mean, one possibility is sincere excitement about messenger RNA. Prior to 2019, there just wasn't the political will or the resources to roll it out on such a grand global scale. So it seems that the perception was, now we have our big chance. Now we have the Super Bowl. Now we've got U.S. government, our world government coffers are opening up. Huge resources are being transferred to our R&D divisions. You get to the pharmaceutical companies themselves. I mean, this is pretty clear. I mean, just look at Pfizer's revenue for the years 2021 and 2022. I mean, it was the best years that Pfizer has ever had in the entire history of the concern. Stéphane Bancel, the CEO of Moderna, it was a small startup in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He became a billionaire in the year 2020, even before it rolled out. It was just the value of his stock in the startup company once they just proclaimed we're doing human trials with this new mRNA vaccine, Boncel became a billionaire. So money is definitely a part of it. The sinister thing, the really troubling thing, is how money and power intersect on this, where suddenly governments could invoke a public health emergency and our constitutional protections, are just suspended. I mean, basically, governments invoked emergency power in order to place us all under house arrest, to suspend the First Amendment, to ban, to censure, to censor entire classes of people who are just simply asking questions.
Yeah.
So I think that money and power, where they intersect, is where you will find the motive.
One of the critiques that people give those of us who've asked questions is they say, you're forgetting all the years that these shots have helped people and saved lives and ended epidemics, polio or whatever. They go through this thing and say, look, you got them when you were a kid. I got them when I was a kid. And now it's the same thing. Just pay attention and do what you're told. Help people in a nutshell understand the difference between then and now, and why it's okay to ask questions that maybe didn't even need to be asked back then.
Well, make a distinction between this new generation of the messenger RNA shots. It's a completely different technology. I would say that calling these vaccines is a semantic sleight of hand. It's a gene therapy. It's not correctly categorized as a vaccine in the traditional older sense. So we make that distinction in the chapters on the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, if you're talking about going back to earlier so-called vaccines, this goes all the way back to the 18th century with smallpox. And what you see starting with smallpox, going all the way up into the 20th century, measles, mumps, rubella, pertussis, tetanus, there's a number of infectious diseases that we've had these so-called vaccines that are now part of the childhood schedule. What is left out of the current discussion, and I think what most young people that go to medical school are unaware of, is that this whole vaccine enterprise, we claim there's the proclamation that it's always just following the science. But as we show in our book, empirical science was really only a small part of this. There was wishful thinking, highly biased evaluations, a lack of anything like true experimentation, never mind a true randomized controlled trials. So a lot of what is represented to us as a scientific enterprise is in many ways, I would say, more of a religious enterprise. There is enormous faith that is placed in this technology based on the assumption that this is really the game changer in the war against infectious disease. Everybody is encouraged to get it. Those for whom it doesn't work, or whom it may even injure, we don't talk about that. We only talk about the apparent successes. Now, the other thing, when we talk about safety, it's oftentimes forgotten. For example, with the rollout of the original Jonas Salk inactivated polio vaccine in 1954, there was an enormous safety event. The Cutter Laboratories in California did not properly inactivate the polio virus. So it resulted in thousands of children being directly injected with active polio virus. So that Cutter incident was an example of how if you hastily roll out a new vaccine, you may well have safety problems with it. That possible lesson learned from the Cutter incident was completely thrown out the window when they rolled out the COVID-19 vaccine.
I could talk about this all day. It's a fascinating topic. The name of the book is called Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. It's by John Lake, and you can check out John Lake's books on Amazon, anywhere great books are sold. John, we're going to run short on time. You do have a website. I know you are out on X, and this is so fascinating because this is such an area that most Americans, it's not a red thing or a blue thing. A lot of people have been brainwashed, and they just need to know the truth. The truth will make them free, and don't believe everything the people tell you, the pharma companies or the I guess government healthcare workers. Sometimes you need to know the truth, and they're not telling you the truth. If folks want to follow you, where do they go?
Well, authorjohnleek.com. Dr. Peter McCullough and I have a daily newsletter where we write about all kinds of things going on in the world. That's thefocalpoints.com. And you can also find my books on Amazon. I've got a new one coming out in February called Mind Viruses, about all of these psychic and social contagions of people doing profoundly irrational things.
Wow.
You can find my books on Amazon.
Yeah. It's just so fascinating. Are we in a rare window of opportunity? Final question of, we kind of went with it. Dr. Fauci said, yes, he can be trusted. They said this. And now we kind of have the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. Robert F. Kennedy simply asked some simple questions that people don't want to answer. Are we kind of in a period of enlightenment or awakening right now, where people that might have been threatening you and said you're a science denier are now willing to kind of understand that maybe there's some questions we should be asking? Is this a window of opportunity for us to be enlightened?
I think that millions of Americans have awakened to the reality that we can't really trust our U.S. government institutions. It would be great if we could. I mean, I would love it if our institutions had greater integrity and could be relied upon to tell the truth. But I think millions of Americans have awakened to the fact that there is something like a Wizard of Oz, something like a Matrix, that the U.S. government has, I think, long been generating in order to keep the American people obedient, ignorant, and compliant. And we're going back to James Madison, our great founding father, who said, no, if we're going to have a constitutional republic, the people actually need to be well-informed and prudent. That was Madison's vision. I think that millions of us are going back to that vision. Unfortunately, the U.S. federal government, the so-called deep state, as your previous guest was discussing, it's immensely powerful. It has virtually unlimited resources and very, very ruthless people working for it. So we've got a tough fight ahead. By the way, it's the focal points, plural. Yeah.
Thefocalpoints.com. It's on Substack. You can find it there. Newsletter, and you're there with Dr. Peter McCullough. Great to have you here, John Lake, and appreciate your time. All of your books, fascinating. The one that you have coming out in February sounds even more fascinating. But the current one is called Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. And you need to get a copy of this, because despite what old Dr. Fauci, the little effer, said, he is not science. He said he is, but he is not. And you need to just, the truth, it'll set you free. Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and the Reality. And John Lake, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir. We'll have you back on. I love this topic.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And it's wild. It just, I hope the scales are coming off people's eyes, that you get and I think the booger cootie virus, the COVID, did that. It woke a lot of people up. It woke parents up as to what was happening in the schoolyard and in the classroom. It really did just cause you to say, wow, I was trusting that nice little teacher and giving her an apple. Didn't realize she was a blue-haired lesbian driving a Subaru and impersonating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I thought she was a nice person. Well, maybe she wasn't. But I think the scales are coming off people's eyes, and what they meant to control us has, I think, awakened a lot of people to say, that wasn't all that right. And some people took a little bit longer. Some of us were called conspiracy theorists back in the height of the booger cootie virus pandemic. We were just called all sorts of names. And now it looks like we're kind of like Noah building the ark. We were called conspiracy theorists until the first raindrops fell. And then everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's it. Some people owe you an apology, and you're not going to get it. And some people just need to say, yeah, I was wrong. I have a good friend who at the time, he was living on every word of Dr. Fauci. I said, you can't trust that guy. You cannot trust him. Early on, when he and Mike Pence and Dr. Scarf would come out there, and Dr. Burks, I called her Scarf, that way he could get past the censors, they'd stand out there and do the daily briefing every day. And I said, they're lying sacks of Jawea. I knew it. I could sense it. My discernment was up. I said, they're liars. They are freaking liars. And I was right that they were liars. And it's good to be right, isn't it? Unfortunately, it caused a lot of pain, suffering, suicides, deaths, businesses collapsed, but exposed a lot. And I think there's the benefit of that. If some people need to go back and look at how your churches responded. How did your pastors respond to the government? How did your government respond? How did your mayor respond? How did your county commissioners respond? I think that's very telling. And yes, again, it's been 3, 4, 5 years ago, but you need to hold these people accountable, and they should never, ever, ever hold an elective office. This is something that gets me. And I think I turned on the morning news this morning, and immediately it was the New York-based news agencies talking about Mamdani and the New York mayor's race. And I'm like, nobody else in America cares. We already think that New York City is a hellhole, but they're New York-centric news. And I know it's the largest city in America, etc. But there's some people say, well, some conservatives are saying that Sliwa ought to pull out of the race and make way for Cuomo. Cuomo doesn't ever deserve to hold an elective office again, just because he's, quote, not a professed socialist. He's a tyrant. And the way he handled the booger cootie virus, he should not be rewarded. He is no better. I mean, yes, on paper, he says a couple of different things. He may not take his things to the extreme as Mamdani, but don't forget what Cuomo did during the booger cootie virus. What Cuomo do? He was one of the biggest tyrants in the nation, and he used the COVID-19 as a weapon that he could fight against Donald Trump. It was all about political gain for him, and it wasn't about public safety. Cuomo is just as dangerous when his policies is as Mamdani, and the policies do not need to be rewarded. And saying that Sliwa ought to drop out so you get the lesser of two evils. Listen, I found the things that these guys did during COVID as pretty darn evil, and I just don't think it should ever be rewarded with another vote again. So it's just funny how we forget, and I'm determined that we do not forget that people like Cuomo, people like Jared Polis in Colorado, people like Gretchen Whitmer, there's people like Gavin Newsom. They're trying to just kind of ignore the past and the tyrannical-like behaviors that they put out during the COVID-19 booger cootie virus. They're trying to deny it, but they should not be allowed to deny it. They were tyrants, and the same people that go out there screaming, no kings, no kings, no kings. They did kings like announcements every day and every week. Our governor here in the state of Colorado, who desperately wishes he was a nationally relevant figure, but he's not, and his policies are greatly unpopular here in Colorado. If you look at the approval ratings, he's become just a joke of a joke. But Jared Polis would like you to forget that every Friday, Thursday, or Friday, he would come out with a pronouncement about what time bars and restaurants had to close. Tonight's closing time will be 10 o'clock. Why? It's going to be 9 o'clock. We got to shut things every week. When they could open and when they couldn't open changed. Why? Because some butthead in the governor's mansion enjoyed his king-like tyrannical powers and enjoyed bossing people around. And, you can walk into a restaurant because I'm the governor and I give you permission, but you've got to have a mask on. But as soon as you sit down, take your mask off. I'm glad I lived in a county where we didn't, for the most part, give a flying rat's patootie about it. A couple of restaurants chose to. I get it. That's their prerogative, the individuals. But these are tyrants, and I think it's just so important to have people like John Lakey on about vaccines, mythology, ideology, and reality, because there's some of these bureaucrats and politicians that are not seated in reality, and the reality of calling Donald Trump a king when they acted like kings and tyrants during COVID shows that these people are delusional buffoons. All right. Good to have you. Are you still? Aiden is still one of the hipster youth here in the studio. Been with, yeah, you know he's a hipster youth when he has the name Aiden. Nobody in my generation had the name of Aiden. We got to do that a whole topic of conversation. Oh, by the way, do we have words? Do people have words they didn't spell? A sheriff, I think I saw Arloa said she had trouble with sheriff is one of those things. Yeah, the question of the day was words that you find tough to spell. Sheriff is one of those. Entrepreneur is one of those. I actually, when I spell Mississippi, MISSI, SSI, PPI, crooked letter. Yeah, remember that? That was a Southern thing. I learned how to spell it. During about a year ago or so, when we were talking about assassinations, unfortunately, that was another one. It's assassination. That was another one. How many S's are in this word? A lot. Yeah. Anyway, words that you just still have to think about. And every time I spell the word 8, if I ever do, it's yeah. What's Jeff says? What's his word? Ornery. Yes, ornery. It's spelled weird, isn't it? Ornery. No, it's ornery, but it's spelled weird. Ask Laura Carno how to spell that one, Jeff. It's incorrigible because that's what she calls me. But she says I'm an adorable incorrigible. So anyway, words that you still struggle with. I find it a fascinating little thing. Every time I spell the word 8, I go back to second grade, little Jimmy going EIGHT. I figured out. I still struggle with that one. Any words you struggle with, Delilah? You're not even paying attention. Delilah couldn't spell cat if I spotted her the C and the T. Yeah, she's still not listening. All right, good. That's good to know. That's good to know. And I got Aiden over here still looking up, trying to find the sex hotel that Mandy Gunasakarov got booked in. Listen, it's not going to be at Marriott.com. I'm sorry. By the way, this is precisely why I handle most of my own travel stuff. I have a professional travel agent, but I don't let any of the hipster youth here handle any of that because that's where Aiden would put me in some strange hotel for strange activity. All right. Yeah, Jeff remembers it. M-I, crooked letter, I, crooked letter, humpback, I. That's it. Yeah, that was that. Anybody learn to spell Mississippi that way? I didn't know what a humpback was. Like a hump. Is there a humpback whale? Like the... I don't know. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Let's do stolen memes on a Monday. By the way, tomorrow I'm on jury duty. Anybody think they're going to choose me for jury duty? I don't know either. But I'm on jury duty tomorrow, so we will not be doing the show. There's no show tomorrow. Do not panic. Do not fret. It is me doing my civic responsibility and doing the old jury duty. So we should be back here tomorrow, Wednesday morning, assuming that I do not get selected for a jury. And usually when they ask your occupation and I put conservative talk show host for years, they usually show me out very quickly to the door. And so we'll see if tomorrow holds true. And I really don't mind serving on a jury, except where I live. I'm like an hour from the county seat. And so go to the county courthouse to do this. I'm 45 minutes at least, and it's a long drive. And why we're still I love the county, and I live here by choice, but it's a long drive. So if you get stuck on a jury, I was talking to a friend, his mother-in-law got stuck on a jury, and in the same county, and he lives a little further than I do. And it was exhausting. She went 2 weeks back and forth. I live in, is it maybe the largest county in Colorado? It stretches, it bumps right up against the Denver metro and actually borders Wyoming at places. So it's a long ways away from my county seat. Yeah. So I hope, just for that sake, if I live next door, it'd be okay. But I got work to do. I've got travel. I've got things on the docket. So, hopefully we'll see how this goes tomorrow. No show tomorrow. We should be back here Wednesday morning, and then it'll be all good. All right, let's do it. Stolen meme section of the show. By the way, red shirt didn't freak any of you out, but like the red, the pops on the blue black backgrounds, I guess, the staging. Yeah, I knew I'd freak some of you out. Oh, Stacy says if you wear your red shirt tomorrow, they might choose you for jury duty. They will notice you. Well, tomorrow I'll be wearing camouflage. Mm-hmm. Because I'm going to hide out and not be seen. I will do that. All right. Glad to have you. I won't wear my red shirt tomorrow. Duly noted. I could wear a MAGA hat. That'd probably get you kicked out. Make America great. 2028. I should do that. Or maybe I get one that says the little effer, Dr. Fauci. There's probably some ways that I could send some signals. But anyway, tomorrow's jury duty. God bless me for serving my community. That's what I do. Ready? Let's stolen memes. I think we should. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from. No one knows. Oh, small print. I got to blow the screen. We're putting a new monitor in the studio here. I got the stand arrived yesterday. Now I can't see it. This is how steak is meant to be eaten. Just a few bandages, and this cow will be able to walk again. I'm a medium, sometimes a medium rare, but beyond that, well, it's chewy. It doesn't break up enough. So it's a chewy, the texture I don't like. The flavor's good, but it's the texture. If it's too rare, the texture to me is just not civil in my mouth. And I have a very civil mouth. Delicate. All right, here we go. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from. No one knows. Ronald Reagan, 1987, keep voting Democrat. One day they'll restrict your freedoms, restrict your history, restrict your safety. All in the name of professional victims that don't understand the consequences of their ignorance. The Gipper, his words ring true, don't they? By the way, I was still in high school in 1987. Never got to vote for Ronald Reagan. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from. No one knows. If you make something idiot-proof, they'll make a better idiot. Oh, by the way, this came from Linda, one of the audience members out there. She gave this to us. Send it over at info@jimmylakey.com. We always appreciate participation. Some of you send me messages on the Instagram. A lot of you actually send me memes there. And the problem is I just forget about them because I have to cut and paste them. The best way, if you want a meme featured, go to info@jimmylakey.com. Send it there, because then it's just a simple forward to the people that screen the memes. But I try to send some of the ones on Instagram, but sometimes I don't. I just have to admit that to you. All right, here we go. Round and around the globe we go. That was Linda. Thank you. Round and around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from. No one knows. Don't shoot. I'm retarded. Prove it. Arresting criminals is racist. Just look at the photo. It'll explain itself. And those of you listening to the audio said, did he just say retarded? Oh, my God. Yeah, I did. Prove it. Arresting criminals is racist. Yeah, there we go. Round and around the globe we go, where we steal the memes. It's funny, actually. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Portland braces as Antifa deploys elites units for war. There they are. Remember what we talked about, the Lululemon, the yoga pants? And when I said that that is a privilege, not a right, this is case in point of that, including the fine gentleman in the red. By the way, I hated that you're showing that in red the day that I wore a red shirt. Should I stand up and let you see what's below? I don't want you to stumble. Round and around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Hey, what are you going to wear for Halloween? Look there. This is, you could be a protester. You can get a blue wig, a 7XL No Kings tee, some rainbow Crocs, an expired membership. You can get a TDS diagnosis for Trump derangement syndrome. And, ladies and gentlemen, you can get a septum piercing. You know what your septum is, Delilah? Right there. Septum. Happy Halloween, everybody. All right, do we have any more? Let's see. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Wait till they hear what I'm going to name the new wing, the Monica Lewinsky Ballroom and Cigar Lounge. I love it. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Ladies and gentlemen, there it is, all the way. Not anymore, and then the gong comes from China and says, you've reached the ends of the earth. I don't know why that reminds me of like a Chinese restaurant. I don't know why. Maybe I'm hungry. All right, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow, no show. But here's what you can do to stay in touch with us. First of all, info@jimmylakey.com if you want to send us a note, a letter. If you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, we'd love to have your sponsorship. We'd love to tell the world about you, both on the program and our other streams and avenues that we talk about. And we have reach on. Thousands of earballs hear and or see this show every day. And so we believe we can make a bump in your business and your awareness and help you build your brand, not just on this show, but all the other endeavors that producer Chad and I have our grubby little fingers in the House of Lakey and the Lakey Entertainment Tower. So I would love to have you be a part of all that we do here. We'd love to help grow your brand and business. Send us an email, info@jimmylakey.com. Happy to send you over some information. Happy to talk to you personally about it. We'd love to have you on, whether you're in Colorado, where we're based out of, maybe you're in Arkansas, maybe you're in Missouri, maybe you're in Texas, maybe you're in North Carolina. We'd love to help you grow and make awareness, especially those of you that have and want to grow a national reach. We'd love to help you do that as well. So just reach out and you can sponsor the program and grow your business at the same time. info@jimmylakey.com. info@jimmylakey.com. Also, again, no show tomorrow, but if you would, when I come back, we're going to do some planning on this today. When I come back, good Lord willing, Wednesday, assuming no jury duty, I'm going to be talking about kind of the march towards my departure for Rwanda. I'll be leaving for Rwanda in the month of November, and I'll be spending some time there, and I'd like to take you with me. Of course, it's too late for you to hop the plane, and it's illegal for me to put you in my carry-on, and some of you wouldn't fit anyway. And checked luggage would be a long flight. You'd probably be dead. So you're just going to have to go with me in another way, and I'd like to take your money. Not for me, but for the kids. So starting Wednesday, we'll start talking about unrolling and unveiling some goals that our little family here on the Lakey Unleashed streamcast and podcast can work together towards. And we got to help some kids. Believe it or not, we're heading towards the holiday season. We're about to start doing some Christmas fundraising. And Christmas for those kids is different than our kids. You know, our kids, you know, they give you a Christmas list. These kids never thought of a Christmas list. They don't know really. I get kids we deal with have never had a store-bought toy. Beyond them, they may find an old rock, they may find a stick, they'll find a tire, and they'll spin that thing. But no one's ever. They don't know what Toys R Us is. It doesn't even make sense to them. You won't find it. And so they don't have a Christmas list like we have. And we're not trying to materialize them and say, oh, you ought to play with trucks. No, they have a great time. They're happy people. They don't need Hot Wheels. That's not what they need, or Barbie dolls. I might have seen a stuffed animal, but we probably took it over there and it gets dirty. And yeah, it's a different world. But what we do is we usually buy shoes and clothing because these were kids that were literally naked when we got there. They didn't have any clothing, very few, some of them literally wearing rags. And so their school uniform is the lifeline to civility and decency, and they get to wear a school uniform. They grow, they play in their shoes, they run in their shoes, they get their shoes wet. We oftentimes replace hundreds of pairs of shoes as a Christmas gift at our Christmas party every December. You say, well, it's only October. Well, we got to start raising money. It takes us a while to round up. Some of you might remember a video of me going to the market where we buy the shoes, hundreds of pairs of shoes. So anyway, starting when I get back from jury duty, hopefully just one day, we will start talking about how you can participate in our Christmas giving. We also try to do a Christmas feast in which we provide all the kids food, a big party. We teach them about what Christmas is all about, the birth and the incarnation of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is a great introduction, a reminder to the gospel that they hear every day at Legacy Christian Academy, our school there. And it's just a great day great time. But we also then try to help their families learn to celebrate Christmas together. So Christmas is not just another day of poverty, but it's a day of celebration. And we provide families food. So there's a lot of ways you to get involved. We'll be talking about that in the coming days. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me to wrap this program up. Again, not here tomorrow. It's going to be a sad day for Delilah, because I won't be here tomorrow, but I know the rest of you will manage, and I hope you do. Don't forget, info@jimmylakey.com, riverspromise.org to make a donation to the charity organization. I'll be back Wednesday morning after a day of civic duty tomorrow. I'll stay by the way, where I'll post mostly if I get chosen or something is facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page, and also on X. So you can check in there to see how things are going. Until we meet again, I mean this. Thanks for being a part of the program. Spotify, good morning, afternoon, whenever you're listening. iHeart, glad to have you as well tuning in. Apple Podcasts, yeah, you're good people. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you the next day. I have jury duty tomorrow. God bless you. God bless America. I am Jimmy Lakey. Peace. I'm out of here.